Now it is my pleasure to introduce this morning's chapel speaker, my good friend, Max Rose.
Good morning. It's been a long spring. It's been cold. It's been rainy. The Bruins have been eliminated. Sometimes, I know, we feel the weight of the school year on our shoulders. We have to take exams. We have to get ready for Spring Fest and prom. We have to worry whether or not it will rain on graduation day. For moments like these, I have a remedy. Take out my phone, turn my back to the entire school, and take a selfie. This past fall, when I was sitting in Mr. Souza's Global Affairs class, getting lectured about what global poverty was and how the UN Millennium Goals applied, I often found myself getting distracted and taking selfies in class. I was doing that typical senior thing. I assumed that the next 4 years were pretty much set for me, so I focused my attention somewhere between judging other people's Snapchats and perfecting my own Snapchats. Honestly, in the moment, I couldn't have cared less about what global poverty was or how millions suffered from it each day because social drama took a higher standing in my life. The Tabor bubble had taught me all it taught, aka buy a cookie at a bake sale and someone else will take care of that impoverished kid that lives halfway around the world. I assumed that poverty was being taken care of by the institutions Tabor sent their funds to, and therefore made the highly calculated decision to space out during Souza's lecture. Thankfully, my distractions substantially entertained me for the preceding 15 minutes of class, and I entered the social jungle of the hallway outside the Linden Auditorium. There, I saw a poster with a tropical beach and palm trees. The poster said, "Spring Break Dominican Republic Service Trip," which to me really said, tan lines, beaches, and awesome selfies. As the fall passed, I continually daydreamed of warm beaches, tan lines, and awesome selfies, which gave me a third thing to do during Souza's lectures. Eventually, over Fall Parents Weekend, I talked to my parents about the trip. I told them the trip would be a quote-unquote fun and memorable experience as a senior. They took the bait. We went up to Miss Candelario and signed up for the trip. To be completely honest, from first thought of going on the trip to signing up for it, I did not once think of poverty in the Dominican Republic or how our efforts could possibly change a kid's life. It was just my teenage nature not to take full grasp of what we would be doing, but rather focus on having fun and getting tan. Eventually, the first week of spring break came and went, and on the last night before the trip, I had dinner with my family. My parents took me to one of the fanciest restaurants in New York City. It was one of my favorites, with whitewashed tablecloths, silverware for every course, and of course, amazing French cuisine. Quite simply, I felt like Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl. The meal topic was about my upcoming trip. I was bombarded with the typical parent concerns. What is the food going to be like? Where are you going to be staying? Do you have everything packed? Max, you haven't packed yet? How much work do you think you'll be doing? How are you going to be able to communicate since you don't speak a word of Spanish? Again, convinced that the trip would be more of a vacation rather than a learning experience, I brushed aside the questions with the fun and memorable experience response and focused on the fact I would not be in New York City till summer. The next day arrived, and I joined the other 22 Seawolves and left the 20-degree weather of the Northeast and arrived in the Dominican Republic. The weather was all I expected, high 80s, and of course sunny with a high probability of Ray-Bans the rest of the day. I was super excited to leave the airport and get to the beach where I'd claim my territory and begin working on the base layer of my tan. We departed the Puerto Plata airport and traveled to our hotel to unpack. We were driving through Cabarete, the local town where we'd be staying on the northern side of the island, and everything seemed divided by a simple road. On the left, there were beautiful 5-star hotels with marble floors, unlimited food, and incredible wealth, something I had spent my life surrounded with. And on the right, I saw a scene I had never seen before. It was poverty at a polar extreme that, quite simply, cannot be compared to anything I have seen in the United States. Cinder block houses with holes and cracks in them, dirt roads basically impassable because of flooding, barbed wire fences, rusted after years of dividing properties, and roofless houses completely exposing everyone inside of them. My whole impression of what the trip was going to be like changed in that few seconds driving through the town of Cabarete. I realized that my being in the Dominican Republic wasn't about my own personal benefit, but rather the benefit of those who needed our help. The rest of the day, I kept to myself, trying not to bring down those around me who hadn't seen what I briefly observed that day. The next day, we began our orientation at the Mariposa Foundation, and I was still motivated by the sights I had seen the day before. That morning, we started our work projects by learning how to make cement by hand and construct cinder block structures. Again, a task I assumed would only take a few hours. However, the real excitement of the day was our afternoon activity, visiting the Calicias neighborhood where 1/3 of the foundation's girls were from. The neighborhood was exactly the same as the one I had seen the day before. The neighborhood was under sea level, meaning that whenever a storm came through the area, pretty much everything flooded. Just the thought of my house flooding every time it rained was enough to completely put me in another state of awe. But there was more. The stench of rotting garbage and decaying waste. The sight of stray dogs eating anything they could find among the piles of trash. People thirsty because of the lack of water. Toddlers with no supervision washing their parents' clothing by hand. The list goes on and on. As we continued our walk through the neighborhood, a haunting picture became further illustrated. As we progressed further and further, we came upon a girl wearing shorts and a dirty t-shirt, carrying a baby in her arms. She seemed about our own age, and at first assumption, I assumed that she was the baby's sister. However, as I glanced at her face, I noticed something was off. Her eyes, because of exhaustion, stayed barely open as we talked to her. Her skin seemed to droop on her face just as an old person's does, and her arms seemed to be in constant pain, shaking from the weight of the baby. Simply, the young girl seemed to have the tired and worn out look that a parent of a young baby has. In that moment, I realized that the 16-year-old girl was a mother. Immediately, my thoughts reverted back to Tabor, as I imagined one of my 16-year-old friends as a mother. The thought simply terrified me. Just quickly imagine yourself being parents already. Imagine having to constantly care, pamper, and dedicate 100% of your day to that child. But now, imagine having to do that where your life is constantly exposed to starvation, dehydration, unsanitary conditions, racial violence between the Haitians and Dominicans, thievery, sexual abuse, and physical abuse. The thought is simply terrifying. However, in the Dominican Republic, having a kid at the age of 16 is completely normal. Quite simply, the emotions I felt that day will be something I will never forget. Following the tour of the Calicias neighborhood, we spent entire days focusing on our work projects and hanging out with the Mariposa girls. Every single time we picked up a shovel, mixed cement, or placed bricks during our construction projects, we literally gave 110%. We all wanted to make our mark. Simply not finishing because of a lack of effort became unacceptable for us. We became so emotionally attached to the foundation that sometimes frustration boiled over in the group. On the third to last day of the trip, Amir, John, Mr. Escobar, and I were working on one of our projects. It was the construction of a waste sanctuary so the foundation could have a place to dispose of their trash. It was around 2 in the afternoon. We were all drenched in sweat, and we were behind in our goal for the day. We were laying bricks one by one in teams of 2, and they literally needed to be perfect. Any misplaced brick could jeopardize the structure and ruin what we had spent the whole day doing. However, because John and I were so focused on our wall we were building, we didn't once realize the wall parallel to us, an arm's reach away, was about 6 inches shorter than it needed to be. After a quick water break, we returned to the structure only to notice our giant mistake. Immediately, I turned to a mirror and screamed words I will not repeat in this chapel. Quite simply, the entire group working on the garbage hut that day experienced a sense of failure. We eventually took down our misplaced bricks and returned to the hotel with the realization that we wouldn't complete our project. That night, the entire group reconvened after dinner to reflect on the day's events. I sat in the corner of that meeting, trying to still get the frustration off my mind. The topic of the meeting was how the 10 Millennium Goals applied to our trip, but we were so upset with our failure that we never really talked about the subject. The group's conversation seemed to go in circles, frequently reverting to the failure of the group. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over in my head. I asked myself if I had failed the kids who needed us. I was miserable and began to cry. As I glanced around the room, I came to the recognition that I wasn't the only one in tears. About half the group was all having the same thoughts and emotions I had experienced that hour. I made the decision it was my time to seek help and ask questions. Tears running down my face, I crouched out in my corner and truthfully my comfort zone and said, "Why me? I don't understand why so many people are so ignorant and act the way they do so carelessly. I don't know how I'm going to go back to Tabor and watch people basically waste their time after experiencing what I had experienced. I don't know if I can keep wasting money the way I do at home with the knowledge that just $10 could go so far in saving a kid. Why did I even go on this trip? There are so many more qualified people than me who could have done a better job." My questions just went on and on. Then after 2 minutes, I put my heads in my hand and began bawling. Miss Candelario quickly began talking, and I realized she was also crying. Honestly, if you had told me on the first day I could ever make candles cry, I would have called you crazy. But the realizations we all had that night seemed to boil over and become a learning moment. She wiped the tears off her face and said to the entire group, "Guys, I'm so glad the group has realized our mission. The purpose of the trip was never about solving or fixing an issue, but to come to the realization that we were also fortunate." I raised my head and reflected on her statement. She went on to tell us how proud she was of our amazing group. The meeting, from start to finish, lasted about 3 hours, and eventually we went to bed with our heads held high, ready to go to work the next day. We never finished the garbage shed, but Amir, John, Mr. Escobar, and I worked hard together at it. We were able to complete the entire exterior. The other team was able to finish the bamboo fence, giving a barrier between the parking lot and the foundation. On the last day, the foundation threw a celebratory party in which they sang us a song. The song lasted for about 3 minutes and acted as their gift to us. Every single girl in the foundation participated in the song, and it showed each Tabor member on the trip that they were thankful for our presence. The song defined the trip for me. It was never about finishing the projects perfectly or finding a solution to global poverty, but rather teaching ourselves so we could understand how unfair the world is and how lucky we are. Our presence in the Dominican Republic showed everyone that suffered there that we cared about them, which to them was so much more than money in the mail sent from Marion, Massachusetts. From that day, I have lived each moment with the understanding that having a global perspective is miles more important than constantly just thinking of yourself. So for the final 14 days of the school year, I want everyone to break out of that Tabor bubble you are in. Learn about something you probably think is pointless. Read about that annoying article your mom posted on Facebook, or watch a video about the usefulness of the Red Cross. Just take 5 minutes. The world is a pretty big place. And oh yeah, back to my selfie. Since the trip, I've come to the realization that it isn't you who counts in the selfie, but what is behind you that counts. I am so thankful that I have the ability to take selfies in front of an audience at chapel at such a beautiful school. Lastly, I want to name everyone that went on the trip. So will Steph, Nicole, Kalita, Alyssa, Cam, MK, Phil, Harry, Katie, Georgia, Hannah, Leandra, Bex, Bill, John, Matt, Karina, Woodard, Hodge, Amir, Miss Smith, Miss Candelario, and Mr. Escobar, please rise. I didn't want that applause just to be for me, because honestly, I couldn't have written this without you guys. Thank you.